So good day, colleagues. It's a pleasure to share our work with you today. The title of my presentation is Turning Constraints into Opportunities, the online delivery of communication skills simulation sessions to undergraduate medical students during the COVID-19 pandemic. I am Dr. Reena Abraham, and my co-presenter is Dr. Leanthia Enoch. I coordinate the Clinical Skills Program at the Nelson Mandela School of Medicine, University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, South Africa. We start off with some background. Effective communication during consultation with patients and their families is essential to instilling confidence in the medical practitioner. The ability to communicate effectively is a core competency needed by a healthcare professional. Studies have found that patient-centered communication tends to enhance health benefits, patient experience, and perceived care quality. So what do we know of the delivery of communication skills training so far? The ability to communicate effectively is a core competency taught during the undergraduate medical curriculum. Communication skills training focuses on history taking related to a specific body system and follows the Calgary-Cambridge framework to a clinical consultation. Various methods are used to teach patient-centered communication skills to medical students. One of those methodologies includes simulation-based training in small groups. The training involves simulating a doctor-patient consultation as a role play using simulated patients. A simulated patient is a person trained to behave as a real patient to replicate a series of symptoms or problems. Simulation during face-to-face encounters is traditionally taught in a clinical skills laboratory, which offers a safe and controlled environment, allowing for students to practice on simulated patients, receive feedback, and refine their communication skills. All that changed in March of 2020, with the nationwide lockdown, and universities, amongst other institutions, had to close their training facilities. In response, medical education made a sudden, albeit unplanned leap into the world of online teaching as a sole pedagogy to replace traditional hands-on learning. This required the Clinical Skills Department at the Nelson Mandela School of Medicine to adapt and develop a structure for delivering communication skills training using an online platform while retaining the key principles and structure of the in-person face-to-face communication skills teaching. To deliver teaching remotely, UKZN opted to use Zoom as the institutional online platform. Zoom is a portal that allows hosts and participants to conduct real-time online meetings and webinars. It allows participants to see and hear each other using webcams and microphones on computers and smartphones. The pilot online communication skills simulation teaching session was integrated into the second-year MBCHP cardiovascular system theme. Detailed case scenario scripts for the simulated patients and a cardiovascular system history-taking protocol for the students based on the Calgary-Cambridge guidelines to assess the biomedical perspective, background information, and patient's perspective of the illness was developed. The objectives of the simulation session, schedule and time allotment, and the history-taking protocol as pre-reading material were shared with the students on the university's learning management system, Moodle. So how did we run the session? The participants for the project included the clinical skills laboratory tutors and second-year medical students. The second-year class had more than a year of communication skills in-person simulation role-play training previously. This figure provides a structural representation of the whole process and the communication channels during the simulation process. We tested various roles, including the roles of tutors as facilitators, tutors as simulated patients, students involved in the role play as simulated students, and the students involved in scenario observation and the debriefing process. During the preparation period, different channels were used to share information between the tutors, training of the simulated patients for the role play, and the actual online simulation training session. Instructions were shared ahead with the students on the expectations of either playing the role of simulated students or observers during the online simulation session, and that the virtual doctor-patient consultation will follow the conventional format. The actual choosing of the simulated students was done during the online session. Students were informed of the need to turn on their video and unmute their microphone when requested to talk to the simulated patient. Each simulation group had one facilitator, one simulated patient, 4 simulated students, and 12 students observing the session. During the online simulation session, the tutor as the simulated patient role-played the patient, while the students as the simulated students role-played the doctor. The simulated students established rapport and gathered information regarding the presenting problem from the simulated patient, as in a doctor-patient consultation, with the microphones and videos turned on. The remaining students and facilitator observed the interaction and gave feedback. The remotely facilitated simulation was delivered in a similar manner as in an in-person facilitated simulation-based training, except that the facilitator, simulated patients, and students interacted with each other via a monitor and speakers from an off-site location. So how did we schedule the communication skills simulation session to ensure the effective use of the 1-hour Zoom session? As mentioned previously, preparatory material was shared with the students ahead of the session so that they were well prepared to interact with the simulated patient. On arrival at the session, 10 minutes was spent welcoming and pre-briefing the students by the simulated student, by the facilitator. That included selecting the simulated students from the group. This was followed by the actual role play using a stable angina scenario between the simulated students and the simulated patient, while other students and facilitator observed. During the session, facilitator debriefing that included interactive feedback to the students on their communication style, reasoning through the case, constructing differential diagnosis, and a medical summary was provided. All participants were actively included in the discussion during and after the scenario. At the end of the session, the link to the survey was posted on Moodle for students to evaluate the pilot session in real time. So a summary of our pilot study. A dry run online teaching month gave us the opportunity to pilot the remote face-to-face simulation-based communication skills training to the second-year undergraduate MD-CHB class. The simulation process was evaluated immediately after the session through an online survey for real-time feedback from the participating students on their perceptions of the effectiveness of the online simulation-based communication skills training. Based on student feedback, there were advantages and disadvantages to the online training platform. Students saw the merit in having aspects of communication skills taught online. Although they did not consider it an ideal platform, they thought it was the best at this time of the pandemic to avoid a substantial loss of student learning time, and saw the advantage of its ease of use as an additional user-friendly learning platform. With previous exposure to immersive in-person simulation, students were able to compare and perceive the usefulness of technology to facilitate learning, mentioning that online simulation met the learning objectives of communication skills training. Interestingly, apart from network connectivity issues, one of the challenges identified by students revealed that they had experienced a deeper understanding of concepts related to the skill. For example, a student commented that he or she could not see the hands and body of the simulated patient through a video screen, which meant that this student appreciated the significance of picking up nonverbal cues in communication skills. Students were even aware of methods to rectify this flaw and mentioned that adjusting the camera angle of the actors during the role play could help to see hand gestures and facial expressions better. An important aspect of a good doctor-patient consultation is active listening and demonstrating empathy. Students mentioned that listening attentively, demonstrating concern, and caring for the patients can be expressed through computer-mediated communication, thereby introducing the concept of digital empathy. Students perceived that their engagement during the sessions facilitated their relationship with their tutors, as one of the students mentioned, open quote, "The tutor gave me feedback on what I missed out and reminded me not to show certain judgmental expressions. I felt like the tutor knows me and was just talking to me all the time. I'm also able to privately message the tutor for real-time feedback on my doubts." Finally, those students were doing this for the first time. They all agreed that the facilitation of the pre-briefing Scenario role play and debriefing on an online platform was intense with less distraction and effective. The Zoom chat facility allowed for providing peer feedback and for responding to questions on the case. They believed the online platform enhanced their understanding of reasoning through cases and felt confident to apply the diagnostic clinical reasoning skills to other scenarios with more practice with their peers. Further, the Zoom recordings made available had the advantage for re-watching or as catch-up, accommodating to network connectivity issues. Watching these recordings also provided them with feedback as it helped with their reflection and self-assessment of their performance. In conclusion, some of the take-home messages are the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on medical education required innovative solutions for delivering communication skills training that required retaining the key principles and structure of the in-person face-to-face communication skills teaching using an online platform. Clinical communication online simulation is an important educational tool that promotes the development of both communication and clinical reasoning skills in medical students. An important requirement for learner engagement with remotely facilitated simulation-based training is the development of contextual understanding, multiple exposures, and a respectful learner-teacher relationship. This study also demonstrates that remotely facilitated communication skills simulation-based teaching evokes a range of emotional, social, and cognitive responses in learners that can influence their attitudes towards acceptance of technology in learning. This potential influence is not limited to undergraduate medical education. With the increasing use of telehealth, especially during the current pandemic, online simulation could be incorporated into postgraduate medical training and nurse education programs to help health professionals reflect on and develop their communication skills. The inevitable transformation of medical education caused by COVID-19 is still ongoing. As the safety of students and training of competent physicians are the responsibilities of medical schools, a consideration that cannot be ignored is how online simulation-based teaching and learning can be sustained after the pandemic. For example, through extension learning or within a dedicated pedagogy such as blended learning. Finally, as medical educators, we should be designing educational models and then testing the design of those models that will increase the digital communication skills of the next generation of healthcare providers. Thank you.